Problem is, give me 1 second here. Let me count it. How about now? Can we hear? Problem is, 1 second here. Everything is starting up right now, so. How about now? Can we hear? Restarting everything on OBS because it's trash. Everything is starting up right now. Problem is, 1 second here. Everything is starting up right now, so. How about now? Can we hear? Restarting everything on OBS because it's trash. Let's go to Elon's page here and get into this. The biggest issue with this censorship is the timing, in my opinion. One of the biggest things, like everyone is talking about, Elon Musk here, going and touring Auschwitz with Ben Shapiro, saying it's the reason for the censorship. I think this is much more the show they put on as the justification, right? So he does this, but what happened the day before? The day before he does this, we had a big thing that happened on X, right here. Today, a bug in our system caused X to incorrectly label numerous posts as sensitive media. We fixed the underlying issue now and are working to remove labels from impacted posts. But what were the posts, right? If anybody... So my audio is horrible. Now my audio is horrible, so let's get out of change my mode here for a second. I don't know what's going on with this audio here, but let's see. Try to hurry up and fix this for you. how does it sound now? Let me see in the chat. It's tough too because there's a delay. Still bad, huh?
I think we got it now. Let me know so we can get back into this. How was that? All right, all right. Let's get going now. So we were just talking about what was shadow banned here. What was this big mistake everybody Elon was on about? And they brushed over it like it was nothing. The big mistake was that icons and Christianity posts, a bunch of Orthodox people talked about this. An ex-spam bot accidentally flagged many legitimate accounts today. This is being fixed. And I talked to all kinds of people, and not all of them were even people who are really heavy on, anti-Zionism or being influencers, in that whole sphere, being like hardline dissident right. There were people that were just Orthodox Christians that were talking about this and asking why they were having their stuff blocked. Why are pictures of Christ and icons and Christian content being blocked? So you would think that would be like a pretty big deal, right? Like many legitimate accounts today. This is being fixed. Well, why did your bots flag Christian content the day before you fly to Israel? The day before you start censorship? Well, you got an app called X that wants to you want to put a chip in everybody's head. And you have a World Economic Forum CEO. Like, really? And the very next day, right after this, is when they put in this speech, not reach. Free speech stops with hate speech. So now we're back to, being able to arbitrarily redefine what, free speech is, what hate speech is. So you can just put through a bunch of woke shit. But we can't talk about whether or not something should be, treated with disdain. Whether or not we're adults who can figure this out. And everyone was so on about Elon saying, go fuck yourself. These advertisers. If you get demonetized, he'll say, well, advertisers don't want to work with you. Really? All of them? All advertisers don't want to work with somebody because they say something politically incorrect. I don't think so. I can go to certain advertising apps and what some of the people will actually refuse to advertise with me because I've been looking into this for my channel. But other people will automatically advertise with anybody. So is it the advertisers themselves that won't work with anybody? Andrew Torba has a whole bunch of people advertising. He's making a whole new parallel fucking economy. Is it really that all these advertisers won't work with anybody? Or is it your algorithm that says you're not advertiser friendly? But then he puts out this gaslighting game where nobody is responsible. It's just these advertisers. Well, it seems like all the advertisers that really have a problem with this already left, Twitter. They all left. Disney. These big companies that are in with DEI. And even then, if there is a company that doesn't want to work with you, is it really the company and the shareholders, or is it this DEI shit that's being fostered on them by bigger businesses, by big investors, people trying to change everything the way it came through the schools and forced itself? So it's a complete crock of horseshit. Oh, it's not my fault advertisers don't want to work with you. We know what's going on here. This stuff is going to be used, and it's not just about the anti-Semitism issue. I'm going to get into this whole Zionism, anti-Semitism, and it's going to have to be talked about because it's a big deal, and we're probably going to be at war in the Middle East here right at the same time that our border crisis is going on. Do you really think it's an accident that they started locking these measures in place when there's white Christian nationalism that's being turned back to, and people are turning back to Christianity and traditionalism in the face of everything these people are ruining and destroying in our culture? It's becoming pretty obvious, even like basic Christianities that aren't that sophisticated. They still had some kind of a point about where we were headed in our society, and we're here. So these people have known and have a forecasted idea that there would be some pushback and people would turn against them. And it's already in their propaganda, it's in their writing, it's in the arguments they were making for some time. And this whole thing's brewing to a head. You know, they've been spying on traditional Catholics, more conservative and fundamentalist Christians. Those were the enemy of like the Rockefellers and stuff when they started taking over divinity schools. You can see in his own writings, he talks about how he's a proud ecumenist. You can see the Edith Rockefeller, everything we talked about in the last stream with Jordan Peterson, with all like the more New Age Christianity. We know about Operation Gladio. They've targeted the papacy and actually infiltrated it to play all these games. And who is this Supreme Court Justice? Barrett, her Catholicity, her Catholicism, and being a woman, right at this time makes this historic case that they don't have the right to close down the border while we bring in an army. This is absurd. And if we want to look at the bigger picture too, beyond just the elites, beyond, with the Zionists or the globalists or the neocons, how all these things play together, it's towards syncretism, towards false religion. Now you have tons of people coming in that are either Islamic, they're charismatic Christians and charismatic Catholics coming in from Africa, Somalia. Both there is that, and as well as that, you also have people coming in from Southeast Asia through Ecuador and whatnot, who often are types of Sufic Muslims. A lot of the ones that have been real quick to jump on the Andrew Tate bandwagon. Some of them are far less strict about the Islamic rules. And a lot of them don't care about that. So you've seen a lot, like Andrew Tate will get pushback for doing this and that. That's haram. Being too sexual, having a bunch of prostitutes, that's probably not a good thing. Bringing in his own kind of Gnostic spirituality and saying whatever he wants all the time. They have an issue and want him to start acting a certain way. Well, some of these Southeast Asian types have like Sufic ideas, and they're a little more open-minded and syncretic. So if you get this coming into our society, into like our low-income areas where everything is blending together, and then you get charismatic Catholicism, you get Santeria-type Catholicism, you get people that are worshiping Saint Death down there, big among the cartels, and a bunch of gangsters and murderers, where they'll rape you in front of your family while they cut you up with blowtorches and put it on the internet, where they hang up, tons of bodies off the bridges. There in Juarez at one point, a dump truck rolled up in broad daylight and dumped 70 bodies right there, decapitated bodies, right there in front of everybody. And this is what's being brought in through our border. But there's also this idea with the Pope, the WEF Pope, completely captured. You had the trad Pope before, dialectics of secularization with Habermas. Bring in these people in. They're talking about open borders. The Pope told everybody we need to have open borders for everybody in a world that's open to everybody. He's completely on board with these types of ideas, and a lot of these people want a Catholic globalism. So I don't know exactly what Justice Barrett's motivations were. Was it that she's a woman and she feels bad for people? That I do feel bad for a lot of these immigrants too, by the way. It's not just like, fuck you people from down below the border. We should stop fucking doing so much drugs and turning their country into a living hellhole. We propped up a lot of these thugs and dictators during the Cold War. and made them who they were. We ran this cocaine into our inner cities and helped create these gangs. That doesn't remove personal responsibility. There's a lot of people that don't want to admit those points because you see it a little bit to the left, and they take, you give them an inch and they take a mile, and they want to get rid of all the personal responsibility and excuse thug culture and all the anti-white stuff. And you could see the violence all the time. You see a kid get beat to death, a white kid getting beat to death by 15 other kids, and we're seeing it all the time in these schools, knockout games, attacking old people, and nobody does shit about it because you would be racist. And then also, if you're by yourself in one of those neighborhoods, even if you did something, you might have 20 people stomp your head into the ground or shoot you. So, but this has all been excused, but we have played a role in this, and we've played this consumerism game, and we've bought our shoes from people working in sweatshops over in the third world. And if you see what some of these people go through, or the reason some of them would send their kids on a train without them, when there's MS-13 that will butcher you and rape you, saying, we're going to, take your kids, you better put them in our gang or we're going to kill you. I could understand why they want to come here, but we still aren't obligated to bring everybody into our country, and we would be able to help people more by fixing this place instead of running it into the ground and spending billions and billions of dollars running it into the ground. We would be better off, too, not giving this much power and money to a bunch of demons and then being told that by these liberals that they're more Christian than Christ and we're bad if we don't want to bring in a flood of people so they can play social engineering games. It's a complete game. It's a gaslighting tactic, and it would be better if we actually just had more Christians and we kept more of our local money local and did things there and started actually helping people in a personal manner and spreading the religion, which creates more people that give alms and help people. So when we bring in an army of fighting age men, military fighting age men, yeah, we say U.S. government. When the U.S. government, backed by a bunch of lunatics and apathetic idiots that are so ready to go watch gay sports ball now that the NFL says football is gay, and that they see it coming on X. Linda, who just said she's going to censor everything. I guarantee you it's all kinds of people that sit there and watch Fox News all day and don't know what's going on. Yeah, I'm ready for football on X. It's all when I scrolled through that shit, it's all everybody was saying. Like, not one person was critical of this, that they're going to have bread and circuses on Twitter while the country burns down. But, by God, we just got to sit here and wait for Trump. But the U.S. government bringing in an army of fighting age men, tons of MS-13 people that'll rape you and kill your family, bunch of Somalians. Dick Durbin, this is the guy that actually moved to keep the Epstein list hidden from the public, put forth a measure. What was this measure? It was that we need to do something with these immigrants, and this has been done in ancient times, right? They like to go back and play a sophistry game and look at times like, say, the Roman Empire had to use, Germanic soldiers or whatnot. So that now we need a way for these people to have citizenship, and we can't, get enough people to join the military because of all these, all the skullduggery right? All the games we've been playing in the Middle East. And then you turn your military into a COVID social experiment and push a bunch of LGBTQ, and you push out all the good people in the military, and you put in a bunch of liberals and bureaucrats and people that will enforce the games of this government. Well, now we have a military that's against us, and it doesn't have enough people, and you can't recruit enough people. So what do? Now these people want to actually give citizenship to these immigrants who will come kick your door in for $80 a week, right? That's an army that's being brought in here. And you have Governor Abbott, who's just spent a decade doing nothing about this problem. It's been a puppet show, just like Elon Musk. What Elon Musk saying "go fuck yourself" is, in front of everybody, it's like pro wrestling for kids. It's like he's Stone Cold Steve Austin going "fuck you" to Vince McMahon, but it's just a game. It's staged bullshit, and then he goes around and does the opposite. So I don't think it's very much of a accident that right before the border issue here, where we're about to go into a civil war, where this could even be a controlled op, we're doing this right before election season, where we could lose our election. But if we don't do it, we keep allowing an army to come in. If we do nothing, we're going to get slow cooked. It's like you're in a deep chokehold, and they just have to keep tightening it up, right? They just keep tightening the chokehold, and they don't have, you do all the fighting, And wherever you move, they just shift and keep tightening down. If you do nothing, you get choked. If you fight, you could still get choked. Your only option here is to get out. You have to fight like hell. You have to do something. But there's no unity because we don't have the same unifying belief. Our country is not aimed at the same thing. Our different groups are in an epistemic fracture. We've abstracted truth, so there is no truth or objective truth that we're unified in. We're not unified in Christ. We have 50, 100, heterodox groups of Christianity. Half of them, they're mostly heretical. Half of them are in name only, or they are infiltrated, or they're churches of neoconservatism, or getting back to where Elon just went, they are Protestant dispensationalists, and they're conservative, but they're in the bag for interventionism when it comes to Zionism. We were ready to get out of these wars with the anti-war right when it comes to Ukraine, and it was more of a Democrat thing, and we don't want to be involved in it. But as soon as it became about Israel, these people are ready to jump right in. And I'm not one of these people that say everything is just the Jews. But you are kidding yourself if you think that this is not a very significant and powerful group that's involved, especially in the West and in the Democrat Party, both with the religious Jews and the irreligious secular Jews, in monetary power. And if their entire existence as a state depends on us continuing to support them, they'll say it's a miracle and whatnot, but if they didn't have, billions of dollars coming in miraculously, and our tanks and our airplanes and our weaponry, and us willing to ignore the USS Liberty being sunk, and ignoring our churches being blown up while we say this is a Christian thing, guess what? They would miraculously be wiped off the face of the earth by the surrounding hostile Arab countries, which is why we shouldn't have put them there. And this is something our CIA was in on. Our CIA. Not only do you have a lot of shady things that went on with the creation of the Schofield Bible, but with Billy Graham and these evangelicals, not only for Israel, but for world policing in Vietnam, things that were unpopular. We used this type of Christianity, and it was pumped by the media, and it was also pumped by the CIA and our intelligence agencies. This is a dissertation right here. I'm not going to get too deep into it, but there's also an overview that's called A Religious War. My computer's being very, very slow. And this gets into this. We didn't. Not only did we get involved in our own religion here with Protestant dispensationalism, we got involved in the Muslim religion in Iran with the same kind of model that we used in Gladio. We've been dragged in, and these people believe in having an apocalypse, and this is also a very significant portion of America. So you have tons of people here that are willing to back this, and they're not saying anything about this censorship. I haven't seen any of these big-name conservatives say anything here, and this is a big reason why. Candace Owens talked about this. She said it to me when I brought up why nobody was saying anything about churches being blown up. Charlie Kirk, I was surprised about this. It actually said something. This is a review about the spiritual industrial complex, America's religious battle against communism in the early Cold War, the soul and containment, and how Christians debated the Cold War and the Vietnam Wars. In this paper here, you will get into the CIA working with Billy Graham, working with other evangelicals, getting involved in Iran. These people want this war. If we get into this, who said anything? Where are all these big free speech people? Where is Ben Shapiro? Where is Glenn Beck? None of these people that were free speech absolutists really wanted to talk about this. How about all these people that were following Elon for free speech? Where are they? Where's Ashley St. Clair? Where's Charlie Kirk? Where are they? How about Sean Hannity? You think Sean Hannity said anything about censorship on X now? That a World Economic Forum leader is bringing censorship on X, saying that hate speech, criticism of LGBTQ? Anything? Anything? Is he worried about it? Well, I'm sure he's worried about anti-Semitism on here, or he'll probably just not want to look like he's against free speech and just shut up. I don't see him saying anything. How about Jordan Peterson? He was big about how we have to be able to talk. Does he have anything to say? I don't think he does. And that was half his shtick, right? Willful blindness. So if you think this is an accident here, that Elon Musk here, you think it's an accident that he did this right before he went to tour Auschwitz. Auschwitz isn't the reason he did this. He's already in the bag for it. The reason he did this was that he's a transhumanist who's already a part of this. He probably wants his money back. I know I talked with Andrew and a bunch of other people on a panel about how Elon Musk was probably also buying Twitter because it helps him to blackmail people. He doesn't just have Twitter. He has the data. He has the product. The product is us. Well, he could sell us to Israel. He already has an Israeli defense company working on the verification of accounts. So if you put in your government ID here to get your little blue check, guess who does it? It's an Israeli company. I had a group here that was on here called Shin Bet that was on here data scraping people and threatening people. They were doxing people, saying visit them. I wonder if Lex Friedman is really worried here about this free speech. And what these people don't get, because they believe in classic liberalism and they believe in neoconservatism and neoliberalism. We must protect free speech, safeguard information independence while tackling anti-Semitism and hate speech. So hate speech, there's a big amorphous term, and anti-Semitism. Well, you just had a motion put forth in Congress, and it was Thomas Massie was the only one who voted against it, to define anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. So now, after you can censor Christian content, I'm anti-Semitic if I do apologetics back at people who attack my faith. That's anti-Semitic. If I'm an isolationist, Himmler of the Boomer Waffen. James Lindsay is Himmler of the Boomer Waffen. I'm James Lindsay, and I'm here. I'm here to defend Israel because Israel is a democracy, and it's a place. It's a place where we can have classic liberalism work, and get rid of esotericism, because it was the policy we had before, and we just need to make the policies we had before work. I used to be an underground fighter, but now I fight the woke by going back to the classic liberalism that made it. You know, did I ever tell you that I just found out that my mom had an affair with Klaus Schwab, and that's where I got the turtle gene from? I'm actually part Klaus. James Lindsay. Well, James Lindsay, another person who doesn't want to go into this, and he doesn't want to talk about the differences between between the religions. Anti-Semitism, though. Now anything is anti-Semitism that even goes against neoconservatism. So now you're going to get sold out by your own side. And now you're worried. You're worried about losing your job even more than you were before. If you step up, and this is what these people don't get, right here. Anti-Semitism and hate speech. Anti-Semitism is your first justification to move here to your hate speech. So you're a retard. You are a complete retard if you think for 1 second that letting these people have speech laws and speech censorship over anti-Semitism, that they're not going to use it on you for LGBTQ. She was just sharing about the new NFL Sunday. When do they go live with her talking about it on X? Right when they said the NFL is gay, when they're pushing LGBTQ into the NFL. They're a part of this. You're an idiot if you don't think Elon's not a part of it just because he tweets half the shit he tweets on your side and then puts out some retarded shit. He's a transhumanist. He has family members that were in Transhumanism Inc. He names his kid after fucking planets and wants to put a chip in your head. Not your buddy. We're using this for the limited time we have because it's where everybody is to make lemons out of lemonade out of lemons. But we're gonna lose our speaking privileges real fucking soon. I guarantee it. And it wasn't an accident. Their little test run they did the night before this to block Christian content. That's the bigger threat. That's why they took Bible with Brother from Nathaniel Kapner. I would say some of what he talks about with Hitler and stuff that I don't agree with is a big liability. That's actually not his strongest weapon against them. Bible with Brother, where he did apologetics against Jews and other heresies and Protestants, but also preached about the gospel, was devastating, especially him being a former Jew and him understanding the problems and little holes in their games and their sophistries and the problems with their scholarship because he was trained in it. And especially with his father taking him to the Zionist Jews, while his father was an anti-Zionist Jew. So he sees the insides and outs of both of those problems. But you're not even going to be able to do apologetics for these people. That will be considered anti-Semitic. And they're going to enforce classic liberalism that forces all these religions to be an abstraction. We're put into the Kantian divide, where it's subjective and only what we can measure, whether or not they have history and they're part of your culture and your identity and your subjective experiences, and whether or not they give some sociological benefit, not whether or not they're true. By doing this, we've killed truth itself. We've reduced truth to a limit case of abstraction, and we can't actually have truth. And we can't actually uphold the truth of our religion that was lost to the West. Right now, it's starting to win in the arguments itself, and we're putting forth a very outsized presence with orthodoxy because it's correct and actually can address a lot of the atheist attacks, and it can address the attacks from all these different religions. One of the things I point to was with Dyer. It's not all about Dyer. I point to him more, too, because we're on the internet, and I'm also talking about politics, and he pertains to internet apologetics. But you can kind of see where our theology comes together with the scripture and the liturgy and the way of life and the fact that we have a living tradition. But when you see that the apologetics and theology in play against multiple groups, they run into the same problems. And that's the same when Vervaeke is talking to Murata. It's the same when we're dealing with Muslims, and it's the same when we're dealing with the Jews or with Christian heresies. You're seeing with the Groypers. A big trap they're falling into is this Marcionite attitude. I had no idea that they even had an official group of Marcionites. But they're Gnostics, and they will throw out the Old Testament as part of the New Testament. So they'll undo the religion itself and just make it an evolution into something new. And the atheists also have this Marcionite attitude that there has to be something better. They can't deal with tragedy. They can't accept it. So they demand something better. Instead of Job, who accepts God as good and puts his hand to his mouth and doesn't speak anymore, they take more of a tack like Carl Jung, in answer to Job, where they demand God make a perfect world. And this entire movement against Zionism, a lot of it has no theological grounding. It's a hodgepodge of Gnostics, Muslims, MAGA Marxists, fascists, whatever the fuck. Marcionites. So it has a Gnostic spirit and will be part of the syncretism with a lot of these Groypers that are Catholics, allowing it like, we're going to stop the degeneracy. We're going to stop the degeneracy pushed by the Jews. Everything bad the Pope does is degeneracy. But then now that he's blessing gays who are openly in a relationship together, well, that's just blessing the sinner, not the sin. And we like that because half of us are involved in degeneracy. Let's watch, Zerka, dry hump a girl and snort coke. So we'll fight Jewish degeneracy with our own tough guy Groyper degeneracy and talk shit to everybody and call everybody who's a real Christian that can actually base their revelation all the way back to the beginning. We'll call them a Jew too, right? You're Jewish. And Jewish and your foreskins and all this shit. And they're a part of it. They're a part of this problem. And you know what? If you were to actually bring these people Instead of playing speech, not reach, if you were to bring these people in front of everybody and actually have a discussion with them, you'd make them look like a fucking retard. Nick Fuentes just said he doesn't need to debate Dyer about the Catholic Church being the answer because it's a certitude that the Orthodox Church isn't right, but the Catholic Church that's fallen now because Constantinople fell once. It's a certitude the Catholic Church is right. Well, it's obviously the most infiltrated place you've ever seen. He can't back his position up. And, you know, he's not a theologian. And he'll admit this, too. He's more of a political debater, and he's damn good at what he does. And he's got a lot of points that he's right about that nobody wants to talk about. But he'll lose that discussion. So if you can't have it, get somebody else. But what happens? You bring out Trent Horn. They lose. E. Michael Jones wouldn't debate Dyer. They run into the same problems. These same issues of the modalist collapse pertain to the Gnostics. It pertains to the Vervaeke project. Same issue of the essences and energies, and also the lack of the revelation. That's a place where some of the Jewish arguments against Jews and arguments against Muslims are similar if you look into the scholarship, but it multiplies with the Muslims. But they both end up against our theology and the essences and energies distinctions. You see this with Rashid, you see it with Shabir Ali. They both were floored on that. Completely floored. Same issue. And if you want to try to tackle Zionism without those apologetics, you're going to be in big trouble because they can attack the incarnation and they can attack Jesus being the Messiah, and the atheists love those arguments too, and they help them with their scholarship even though it's not settled. If you don't have a defense against that, you don't really have a defense against Zionism. You don't have a defense against Protestant Zionism, Christian Zionism. But these people don't want you to have that conversation. They want to censor that conversation. That's a massive silver bullet to them. And they will block that the way they were blocking Christian content. And then they'll take these people and use them as their excuse. Instead of letting these people come in public and talking to them and cutting out the bullshit and then talking to our people about where we are right, about isolationism, where we are right, about our religion, where we are not compatible with Judaism, and where a lot of these people work together with the atheists. They work together with the Freemasons. They work together with the Fabians, with the Anglo-Atlanticists. They help each other. Even when they hate each other, they help each other. They're also enmeshed. They're hedging their bets. They've also gotten in bed with China. They helped Bill Clinton sell our secrets to China while he was going to Epstein Island, while he was president, flying there 26 times on Air Force One to fuck kids like half of our politicians, half of the people that talk to Peterson. Been to Epstein Island. Piers Morgan, Epstein Island, setting the parameters of debate with Ben Shapiro. The Overton window is set by those two, the same way Noam Chomsky and William Buckley used to. And who's William Buckley? A Fabian socialist who helped set up neoconservatism and was knighted by the Fabians in England. Noam Chomsky, radical leftist, Epstein Island. Like, why are these people setting things? We wasted the last 10 years on this IDW and the Peter Thiel funded bullshit and TED Talks funded bullshit and a bunch of atheists hoping that they would like us while we all circle jerked each other instead of actually talking about the stuff and getting to the core of it. And we're not going to get to keep talking. So I should be a little bit more kind and Christian here because I think that's where we're headed, where we're going to have to be, and it's not going to be easy. I don't know how any of us can even do it, to be honest, because only God could allow us to, because it's going to get bad, and we are not ready for it. We can talk a good game, and we can be men and do whatever we have to do, but there's no way shit's not going to get really bad. You might even be in situations where you can't fight back. We're not pacifists either. And we have a right to defend and enforce boundaries and defend our families and do our duties and take care of them. And if that's possible, we should. And I think there's a lot of moderates and some people in our own churches that want to take a stance where that's terrible. I think they're more worried about us actually being in a position where we would be justified to fight back and where it's a possibility than they are about actually, they would rather allow it they would rather miss the opportunity to do that because they're scared that it would make them a bad person and that they would have to stand up while we have a chance So they'll act like we must be pacifists all the time to get to let it get to the point where we have no choice but to be pacifists, because there is no just warfare, there is no fighting back, and you're in a position where you have to be martyred. And I think they've been conned into this and gaslit into this by atheists and enemies of Christianity telling us what Christians need to do, when they don't actually have our ethic. They don't understand the nuances about defense and standing up against evil, and they don't care, and they weaponize our values against us. And that's a very powerful tactic, because those actually are our values. Paul talks about how without love we have nothing. Well, that is the hierarchy. That is the most important thing. And we do have people that did martyr, but it's not the only thing. There is a hierarchy of values, and we are allowed to defend what's right, and defend ourselves and defend our families. And we don't have to let it get to the point where millions of people are going to die, where we just sit here passively doing nothing in a very unmanly way. Like, God made us into men who have a function, and we're supposed to defend against this kind of evil. And we just sit here while they tell us they're going to make disease X. This week they have a party where they go have a bunch of prostitutes and cocaine and say, we're going to make disease X. Fuck you. Yes, and I'm being hyperbolic. You want to hit me with like a fact check. Yeah, no shit. They didn't come out and say they're actually going to do it. They're obviously saying it between the lines. Oh, there could be the next disease. Well, they're obviously setting the window to do it, and it's election time, and they're going to do it on purpose. And they didn't get in trouble for it for 4 years, so they have no incentive not to do it. They have every incentive not to get in trouble for killing millions and millions of people. They have everything on the line. They're up against another country that would like to take them out when it comes to Russia. Half of the Muslim world is turning against them. Half of them are blackmailed scumbags that fuck kids. So yeah, they'll do anything they can to stay in power, and they already did this once, and we know what they're doing, whether or not I have it down on paper. Like, if I'm walking down the street and I see a group of dangerous guys coming down the street, I don't need a fucking study. I don't need to be like, well, I don't actually have a study that proves these guys are going to hurt me to take my wife and my kids and go across the street, right? Or to defend myself or prepare. Obviously, they're going to do disease X. The same week that they're doing that, they drop this censorship, and he goes to Auschwitz. Now, I'm not a Holocaust denier. I do think they've weaponized it, though. I think they might have exaggerated it a little bit. And I don't think we like to talk about the fact that they were pushing the same kind of books that they're pushing to our kids in schools right now, teaching them how to do oral sex and anal sex and how they could identify as 20 genders, and pushing a bunch of garbage. Those are I'm not a defender of Hitler. I have groypers and stuff that come after me because I will not defend Hitler, who was a neo-Aryan with his Christian positivism that didn't really care for Christianity. That was what he put forward. Believed in a kind of internal personal God, and was moving forward in a type of dispensationalism that was secularized. Religion was a tool to him that had to submit to him while he worked with pagans. More scientific and atheistic version of like what Napoleon had. And you can't get around that. You can't get around that in Mein Kampf, even if you have propaganda and table talks. So I'm not a Hitler supporter. The choice, because nobody did the right thing and they had no unifying Christianity and they were bereft and they also were defeated in the previous war, they were put between a choice between being pillaged, continue to be pillaged by the other European countries that were pushing this degeneracy and putting forward a Fabian solution that used a lot of radicals and put them on the border of being taken over by radical communists. So stay in a banana republic while they bring in people from Algiers to rape your women, become communists or become fascist because they didn't do what they were supposed to do before that, and they went down a very bad path, and they got to the point where that was the only choice. And he stopped a lot of degeneracy. He stopped a lot of rape and pillage of his own country. So I'm not a defender of Hitler. I'm just stating the facts here. This is the same with Stalin. Stalin's a scumbag. I don't care for these people saying that we have to like Stalin because he was a fake saint with the church he put up that murdered the real Orthodox saints and new martyrs. And you get these Orthodox people and fake Orthodox people that are part of Jackson Hinkle's movement. Just because Jew is bad, I'm not going to support Stalin. I don't support Hitler. But this is what they were both doing. And Stalin also kicked out a lot of the way we wanted to control that country. We funded that Bolshevism. Anthony Sutton backs both. Dyer's lectured on that. I'll be getting to that too, because I got the book and I've read it. I got to study it a little more and prepare before I stream on it, because I've been looking into a whole bunch of other stuff. But this shit right here, these people, if you don't deal with these problems here in our country, you're creating the anti-Semitism. If you have large numbers of people that are Jewish working with these other people, and by the way, I think too, some of these other groups would be fine with the Jews having everybody turn on the Jews because they're evolutionists. And they believe if an idea is weak, it should be destroyed. And if an idea is strong and it kills all the Jews, if an idea kills all the Jews, then it was strong enough to survive. So they'll jump on board with anti-Semitism if they have to. I think that some of these people would like to use the Jews as a layer of protection too, so they can be blamed. So they can play a twofold game. One, if you try to stand up for yourself against, the Federal Reserve, against the ADL, against all this shit going, all the cultural Marxism and critical theory, you stand up to that. Now you're an anti-Semite and you're scared to even stand up to it. If you stand up to it successfully and you're another elite, well, you can just blame it on the Jews. And if they actually are successful, your populace takes them out, and now you can run with that populace in a fascist country. You become Muslims. A lot of these people like Sufism. But in doing so, you've also empowered the Zionists. You've empowered the Jews. You've put a lot of powerful Jewish people into the banks. So you can't just you can't just use somebody like that. When you use somebody, you give them power. And we're in a position now where standing up to people making your kids gay involves pointing out that there's Jews involved. If you're going to have endless wars for globalists and neocons, well, you're indentering yourself to banks that involve a lot of people that happen to be Jewish. There's no way around it. And all these so-called free speech absolutists that don't want to talk about it. You don't have to be pro-Hitler. You could actually have a debate with these people and say, hey, we just don't want you controlling our country from outside. We don't want Mossad blackmailing our politicians by having them fuck kids. We don't want Jeffrey Epstein Island. We don't want to be involved in installing a country and be conned to installing a country that drags us to endless wars, and we're headed to World War III. Right as it's becoming obvious that Iran's getting involved, what do we get? We move towards censorship. So what Elon Musk did was pretend this was a free speech place so that we would all be baited into here. And I think they up-leveled people. I think Jackson Hinkle was working for somebody, and they made him the most viral account on X. And I think they helped Lucas Gage. I think they helped make him who the fuck he was. That doesn't mean he's an operative. I think Jackson Hinkle is. I think Lucas Gage is an angry veteran. I'm a veteran myself, and I was like a fuck up when I got out. And I've seen where guys will be angry about the way that went down because, like, my unit had 11 guys kill themselves. The war was for nothing, especially the second time we went over and fought 3 times less and lost 3 times more guys. And if there's a source of this that you can be angry at, and there's one problem to solve, I think I've seen a lot of veterans kind of like really fall into this. And I think Gage is like that, but I think he was successful at it and became somebody. So now there's money on the line too, right? And if you made your whole thing being anti-Jew guy, just I'm really sick of talking about Jews, but this is such a big deal right now, and I saw like no nuance on it. So I figured I'd be an idiot and talk about it, which means you'll get fucking canceled too because you can't talk about it at all. It doesn't matter if I'm a Nazi or an anti-Semite when I'm not. I'll still be treated as such for even broaching these issues. But if you make yourself into the Jew guy, like Hinkle has or Gage, well, now you got a lot of skin in the game, right? Because if these people win, you're fucked. So it's all or nothing. And then it starts to accelerate itself, and the people on the Jewish side of the question will say, hey, we got to stick together against these anti-Semites. And I think X helped make those. You think it was an accident? David Patrick Harry has been shadow banned on here for years for talking about transhumanism, which is what Linda fucking Yaccarino is, working at the World Economic Forum. It's what Klaus is. It's what Elon is. It's what Peter Thiel is, who backed half the IDW conversation. A bunch of transhumanist goblins doing blood shit. Well, I don't think that they're, you could block all Christian content 2 days ago. You could throttle everybody back in 2020. You think it's an accident that they just let everybody say the most anti-Semitic shit you ever fucking heard for 3 months? And that they made I would guarantee you that they made Jackson fucking Hinkle and Lucas Gage who they were. And I don't think you have to even have a connection to them. You don't have to have a connection. All you have to do is let the algorithm let him talk for 3 months, and then when he says one thing, kick him the fuck off. It's like when the government made the parental advisory label on albums, like rap albums. They made rap albums 10 times more popular, but they got to pretend they were fighting it and pretend they were against it. I think they did this with Tate too. Whether to the degree to which these people are actually involved in it or know what's going on, it doesn't matter. You could be made into somebody. You could be made into a government operative without even knowing you are. They could just fucking make 10 different bot accounts to fund your Patreon and send you fucking $200 super chats at a lower level and keep you going and boost you up the algorithm. I get like Destiny shown to me all the time on YouTube, though I never watch him. And I say, stop showing me this. You think they couldn't make Jackson Hinkle? You think the shit he was saying was allowed to go up the algorithm accidentally? Well, I think you're a fucking fool. I think they staged this thing as a big pro wrestling fucking fight to have the bad guys and the good guys here with Zionism and anti-Semitism. I think they've also used and put a lot of attention and focused the attention on people like, queer people for Palestine and BLM for Palestine, so that the neocons will go back to being neocons instead of the anti-war right. And now they turn around and say, wow, look at this big problem of anti-Semitism. We better do more speech controls. We got to stop this. We got to tackle anti-Semitism right when Iran's getting into the war. Right when we're losing in Ukraine, right when election season is looming and we're about to lose, right when we want to do disease X. Because if we all said, these motherfuckers are killing us left and right, they're censoring us for putting up Christian content, they're persecuting us, they might have a resistance. So this is to stop the communication that would be necessary to fight them. And it's timed. They timed it on purpose. That shit was a test run. Your Christian content will be stopped. You'll be called anti-Semitic. I thought it was like a troll thing at first. You had an AI bot for Israel on here saying that Christ is king is an anti-Semitic saying. They'll turn that into they'll say you're anti-Semitic for speaking your religion. And this is how they will do it. And all these fucking people here. And let me change my language here. These people that are big time conservatives and big time classic liberals that really believe in it and aren't saying anything about this. Like Jordan Peterson, he's the cognitive dissonance there. How now, ADL? How now, brown cow? How can you do all this stuff, ADL, and push the LGBTQ and go after and weaponize people and help Justin Trudeau? But now I gotta go stick up for Israel as though it's not connected, and I'm gonna remain silent. I will be silent while X tells us that we must have our speech stop at hate speech. First they came for the Nazis, and I did not care because they were Nazis. And then they came for anybody who said something disparaging against Jews, and that's anti-Semitic, so I did nothing. And then they came for anybody who was anti-Zionist and isolationist, and a real Christian instead of a Jungian Christian worshipping Disney cartoons. And I said nothing because that was redefined as anti-Semitic, and I didn't want anybody to call me anti-Semitic and lose my job at the Daily Wire. And then they came for me, and that's bloody not how I thought that was going to end. And they sent me to the gulag. Do these people not get it? Do they not understand that allowing them to play these arbitrary games instead of having the tough conversations? You could go talk to Muhammad Hijab. Muhammad Hijab has actually advocated for pederasty in the Quran. There's a video of him, and Sam Shimon is there in the audience. He doesn't even argue with him. He just stands there with this shit-eating grin on his face because he's just watching Muhammad Hijab just hang himself right by the neck. Did you know that in the Quran that he married Aisha at this age, and there's nothing in the Quran against pedophilia. Nothing, not one thing. That's not why we don't do it. We don't do it because we want to yell at people that are 14 years older, 14 years and higher, and tell them to get on their knees, Gimp, and have a golden shower. We don't have sex with kids, but we could if we wanted to. Like, this is Muhammad Hijab. You know, Jordan Peterson can go talk to him. But don't talk to anybody who has a problem with Zionism. You can't separate out these retards, these Marcionite idiots whose only thing in their worldview is Jews. You can't debate them, and you can't differentiate them from us, right? Well, I would say by refusing to have that conversation, you've actually allowed Twitter to blow up a bunch of low-tier people like Jackson Hinkle and a bunch of actual Nazis. And now there's skin in the game. And then everybody sees this censorship coming, and they see what's going on with the WEF. They see that we have an army of people that will actually kill us. We see that there's people that are ready to release a disease on us, and they want it to stop. And this is why a lot of Christians supported Hitler. You've allowed it to happen. This is Jordan Peterson's whole shtick, that you're engaged in willful blindness, that when a society starts to crumble and collapse, ignoring what was going on and letting it get to that point was a part of it. Well, you're doing it too because you don't want somebody to call you an anti-Semite. And that's fucking gutless. It's completely gutless to sit here and ignore this going on. And it's not just him. I'm kind of pointing at him when I know his thought, and I'm adjacent and know people in other groups where they talk about Peterson a lot, and it's for making the point. But like, he's kind of indicative of that whole thing because he's in the center of between like the more free speech, classic liberals on the left to the neocons and the traditional conservatives and your Roger Scruton conservatives. And he's able to kind of reach into libertarianism and multiple religions. So he's kind of, I guess, a mean or an average for multiple groups. And you can kind of see all the people he's adjacent to in all those groups who have platforms that could be saying something, and they won't fucking say shit. And then we're supposed to be like, get a cookie thrown to us like, wow, it's so great to watch, Ben Shapiro debate Destiny. Like, our society's we're about to get hit with disease X. And everybody just wants to sit around having these circle jerk conversations about nothing. This is where the attention needs to be. And it's with these people right here. They baited everybody in so that they wouldn't go over to Gab or Truth Social or go somewhere else. And we're probably gonna get canceled. I'll probably lose my job for saying this kind of stuff. You're probably gonna have people trying to kill us. You have entire regiments now of immigrants. Now, if this becomes a civil war, right? Let's say this becomes a civil war. Let's play this out. This becomes a civil war. Now, everybody they've been calling the greatest threat to America for the last 15 years for being white, patriotic Americans, for being Christians, spying on Christians that go to the traditional mass, spying on Russian Orthodox churches. Well, now you really are a terrorist just for having the wrong opinion. I did read No One Feared Death by Father Peter Hears, and I actually used it in one of my, I believe I used it in one of my streams, or I was preparing to use it with Father Deacon Ananias's essay there. I talked about it where he gets into Vogelin and Gnostic systems, and Father Peter said that the churches failed miserably to discern the spirits of this movement. And that's something like, you can't sit here and pretend that this liberalism is something we can play patty cakes with. It's completely aimed at us like a machine gun. It's hostile to us. The spirit behind this is a spirit of Antichrist here. It may not be the Antichrist. Nobody put words in my mouth. Like, we don't know when that's going to happen, but the typology here is very clear. Especially if you get deep into the ideas behind these movements. It might be. I'll send you a message if I find it, or if I used it in my Gilchrist. I don't think I actually used it yet. I'm going to use it in the next one. I might have talked about it, but I got into that in Vogelin a little bit. So, if you look at this, how hostile this is to us, and we look at the fact that we will be marked out as terrorists and subversive to the society. Now all they got to do is take your job away. You don't comply, there's going to be violence. I think they'll use as much soft violence as they can. They might just like leave you depersoned with no way to keep your home, no way, and just keep you so nobody can hear from you. Maybe it'll be like in China where you're not allowed on the subway and you have to sit there and nobody wants to engage in any humanity and help you because they don't want to have to join you, and they'll step over you in the gutter. Right? So it's not going to be good. And then if we actually fight back and it's too late and they've really forced half of our policemen to leave the force, they've targeted certain people to terrorize anybody in the police from standing up. They went into one guy's house and threw a flashbang in there and hurt his kid. They've gone after the Oath Keepers, who are the police and military that say they will not violate the Constitution and target the citizens. That's what will happen. You will have no way to show anybody. Now, God can make it so people could see you anyway. He made it so everybody knew about St. Anthony, who lived, in the desert and in the tombs, and everybody heard about him. But when it comes to us normal people, like, this is not going to be good. So if you have this happen, the amount of power that the government will have against you and its ability to target you as an enemy if you don't agree with what they're doing, just by what's going on in Texas right now. One of your ways to fight back would be by speech. Now, if this is where everybody is because they lured everybody in before playing these games, we have a big problem, right? Like, maybe some of these people these people that are involved in these politics aren't retarded. When I talked to Candace for a second, just on Twitter, like, I don't really know her or nothing, but I was like, why aren't people saying anything about your churches being blown up by Israel? Well, a lot of people have a problem with it, she said, behind the scenes, but they're too scared to say anything. They don't want to be blacklisted. And I'll bet you it's what's going on here, because these people aren't retarded. Some of them aren't the sharpest tools in the shed that we have representing us, but some of them are pretty smart and they're involved in this as a job. They have to know the ramifications of this. So let's keep going though. So your border. Now we have a civil war. They can balkanize and target us. How about if we go to war in the Middle East and we're in an official war? Now you have executive war powers for that, combined with putting down a civil war here. The Jacobins in France, they did this. They actually helped inflame wars with their neighbors. The historians like to tell you a bullshit story that everyone was just so scared that the monarchies were going to come after them. A lot of them tried to make peace. They didn't like the ideas here, and they did have some concerns, but they actually inflamed the relations. And the man that was basically like their Secretary of Defense, I forget what his name is, but in the book, there's 3 volumes on the French Revolution by the historian Hippolyte Taine, who gets into this. When he was executed, he wrote his memoirs and he talked to people. He said they did everything they could to stir up war because they were circumvented by their constitution. So having war powers, as are endless wars, which does involve Israel a little bit for the last decades, has given more and more power to our government. I talked about that with the Collins brothers in my interview there. It starts like 35 minutes in because of some tech problems that I always have. We talked about neoconservatism and the state power and this rise of this scientific dictatorship. Well, these endless wars have given a lot of power to our government. So imagine if we end up on the brink of a third world war and we end up in a real war with Iran. And we have this issue on the border. And then a cyber polygon happens. And another disease happens. And you have nowhere to talk about it. And they've baited everybody in here with these liars. Well, guess what? We're going to have some serious problems, and they will have serious control. You've already seen who will be targeted. It was everybody who's Christian and conservative. They're already throttling back everybody that's anti-Zionist. And you've given a lot of power to these people. And even though I've sat here and said everything in the world isn't the Jews, they do have an eschatological significance. The whole world is going around the place where Jesus was born and where the Israelites were temporarily chosen to be his people before it went to them and the Gentiles and a light to all nations. They want to have a false Messiah. The Muslims have their own apocalyptic and eschatological ideas. The transhumanists have an eschatology, right? They're moving towards an omega point, and they're going to get in a lot of trouble if they lose their power. And they have this big problem with Russia. So if we go to war in Iran, well, that's a route back over into Ukraine, because if they lose the Ukraine, they don't get to control energy. They don't get to control trade. More nations can opt out of the European Union that are close to Putin. They don't get to control the grain. They don't get to do their net zero great reset, right? They don't get to keep spreading degeneracy in more and more countries that don't want a bunch of homosexuality, a bunch of pornography, anti-family stuff coming in, consumerism, and having their countries destroyed, are turning around and saying, fuck you, we're going to go with Putin. This is a big problem for them. The fact that they're starting to lose in Ukraine, while there's a bunch of propaganda that they're winning, I tend to agree with Douglas McGregor that they are moving slow and setting up classical fighting positions for first world warfare with the U.S. because eventually we will enter this. The U.K. just said that they will draft men to fight. They'll draft our women. They'll draft our daughters. You're not taking my fucking daughters. So now I'm an enemy, right? If you ever looked into the non-sedition acts that went on with Lincoln, or what went on with Woodrow Wilson, or what went on under FDR, even though that wasn't as hard to enforce because more people agreed with that war. It's bad. Now, could you imagine having that with this technology and the ability to spy on people and just cancel people? It's what they want. It puts everything into their hands. And we've been saying how all these scenarios could happen and that they will try to actively move towards them. And not only that, that the American populace, with the two allowable opinions, with this crazy leftism and with conservatism that is involved with neoconservatism and this blind support of Israel, we're marching towards it. And I think it's going to happen. I don't see why they would not want this to happen and why the prevailing ideologies will not sit back and let it happen. And you got people that are more concerned with watching the football game on Twitter while they turn football gay than they are about what's going on here. So we kind of like get what's coming to us for being this stupid. And they know we're this stupid. They would, like, you're really going to sit there and drop down this censorship and gaslight us and have even conservatives that you control, like Ashley St. Clair, saying, you're not being shadow banned, you just suck. Just right next to the Krasenstein brothers. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm going to let you guys go. That's going to be the end of this. God bless you guys. Good night.